Dr. Lisa here from Fun Stuff Crafts. So glad that you could join me again today. So today's project comes about because last weekend I was looking through Facebook. I've given you guys some hints on how I get inspiration in the past, and one of those is I belong to some Facebook groups that is all about crafting. So Cricut Craft Life was one that I was looking through the other day, and someone had posted a round pine board that they had picked up. Now I see them at Home Depot all the time, and they had said, hit me with your ideas. What have you guys been doing with these? So I threw out a couple pictures of some projects that I've done over the past year, and someone commented on them, and conversation was going back and forth, and she had asked if I could put together a tutorial on how I made it. So that is the reason why we're here today, and this, let me bend down here, this is what I'm going to show you how to make. So normally I don't use this big of a round, but when I went to Home Depot to pick up this for the project, this is the only size they have. So they come in two sizes. This is the large size, so that's what we're going to work with today. So give me a few minutes to get my camera angle changed, and we will get making. Okay, so let's start off with the supplies we're going to use for this project. So I'm starting off with a pine round that I picked up at Home Depot. Now normally I use a smaller round, but they only had the 23 3/4 inch round in stock today. So this is going to be end up being a much bigger tray than I normally do, but you can either go with this size or the smaller size. The other thing I picked up at Home Depot today was some handles. Now, I would tell you that these type of handles you can also pick up at your local Habitat for Humanity too. So always things to look at. I also look and try to pick these up at garage sales. So another item that we're going to use. I've also already put together my design. Can't quite tell here. We'll weed that in the next step. But this is 651 vinyl that I'm using, so I've already cut those out of Cricut Design Space. So that is my vinyl. I am going to use some sandpaper just to lightly go over the wood, just to make sure that it's good before we stain, which is going to be our first step. Along with the vinyl, I'm going to need some transfer tape. This is the blue transfer tape that I get at 651 vinyl. It's my absolute favorite transfer tape. It works really nice. I'm going to use a Varathane wood stain. You can pick whatever color that you like. This is going to be Early American is the color that I'm going to be staining this one in. And then how you want to finish it off is your decision. Now, one thing I always like to think about is what's the use of the tray going to be. Now in this case I'm making a tray. In some cases maybe you want to make this to be a sign, or you want to make it to be a Lazy Susan. But if there's any chance that food is going to be on it, you always want to read the back of your cans to make sure that it is food safe. Now in this case neither one of these are. I'm using this as a tray just to carry things. I use a tray all the time when we eat outside. You can use either one. I use this shellac on one of the trays that I did this month, and then I've also used this clear glaze. So whatever you happen to have on hand will definitely work, but we are going to use that clear glaze in 2 steps. I always have a rag because that's how we're going to apply the wood stain. And then I always like to put on plastic gloves when I'm getting ready to do the stain. So what we're going to do is I am going to run the sandpaper over this. I'm also, probably should have done that before I put the glove on, but I want to remove this sticker. And it's going to cooperate with me, it looks like. So we just want to get that sticker out of there. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my sandpaper and I'm going to run the way across the board. And I like to just give it a light sand just to make it even. This board is actually in really nice shape, and so I just go around it. And then one thing I always like to make sure I do is, and it's kind of hard to see in the video here, but I'm actually going around the edges. Sometimes that's the roughest spot of the board is actually the edges. This one is actually really nice. And I don't normally sand both sides. I'm going to finish both sides, but I don't normally sand both sides. Now, a trick I have learned over doing these for a few times is you absolutely want to make sure that your stain is totally dry. So this is not a project that we're going to finish tonight, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the stain on the front. And so I'm just going to, and you can do it with the paintbrush or you can do it with a rag. I just find doing it with a rag works really nice. And the stain is just going to depend on how dark you want it to be. I like a little bit lighter finish. Some of them I've done with more of a gray tone. So a lot of it too is going to depend on what design you're going to put on. In this particular case, I'm going to make a established sign that is my last name initial, last name, and the month and year that my husband and I got married. So it's really going to depend on that finish and then the colors. So I've chose to do a gray and a white, and I really like just a fine finish like this. Now, I would say this is also a good time that we could do the sides, but I'm going to show you a little trick for that. Okay, so that side has dried a little bit. Still not totally where we're ready to apply our vinyl, but it's dry enough that we are going to do the back side. So now all I'm going to do, and you don't have to do the back side, I just think it looks better from a presentation standpoint if you've got both sides done. So we're going to go ahead and just work through. And you may find as you're doing the back side that you like the character of it better. That's totally your choice. The one thing I would caution you on is we are going to be applying vinyl. And so if you have a lot of knots in your wood, those knots can be a little havoc with the vinyl. I would also remind you that we only ran the sandpaper over the front and not this. Now this piece of wood actually was really nice, and so I really probably could have got away without sanding it, but I always find that it is a good thing to do. So we're actually going to let this sit overnight. I'm just double checking the sides here. I'm going to let this sit overnight, and tomorrow we will pick up for our next step of this project. So we're back, and my tray is all dried. So I've let it sit overnight, and it is nice and dry. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tray outside, and I am going to spray some triple thick crystal clear glaze on it. And I want to do this so that it will help the vinyl adhere. I've done it a couple times before where I put the vinyl straight on this finish, the stained finish. And sometimes I struggle with the vinyl adhering. So I've learned this trick that go ahead and put a coat of this clear glaze on top, and then we'll move on to the next step once that clear glaze has dried. So I'm just going to take this outside, and I'll be right back with you. So we're ready for our next step. I have my board, and I did put about 2 coats of the clear coat on it, and so it's got kind of a nice smooth finish to it. I did go ahead and wipe it off. just to be safe. And so the next thing we want to do is we want to find the center point of this round, because we want our emblem to be centered. So what I like to do is just use my tape measure, and this is, as I said before, 23 and a half. So 11 3/4 is going to be my center. So I'm going to take a pencil and just mark it very lightly. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, 23 and a half, 11 3/4. So my center is right about there. So that way I'm going to be ready for, and we can even put X marks the spot. So the next thing we need to do is we are going to weed our design. Now I have a design that I cut out with 651 vinyl. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but I really like to use 651 vinyl. I get almost all of my vinyl at 651vinyl.com. They have great customer service and they've got really good turnaround time. The other thing I discovered at 651 Vinyl is this pin pen. It is a weeding tool. I'm going to put that up there, see if you guys can see it with the camera. And it is slick. It's literally a pen with a pin at the end of it. And so I've already done my design on Design Space, and I measured it out. You know, it's really going to depend on the size of board you get, but you just kind of have to eyeball what size you want your emblem to be or your wording to be. Now, I gotta be careful here, Lisa, because I don't want to bring up the wrong letters. And almost there. Great. I got that sticking everywhere, so I'm going to get that out of the way. And then I've just got a little bit more to weed here. You want to make sure you get the insides done. This is why I like my pin pens so much. It's one of my favorite tools. I talk about that in my blog post where I talk about all the different tools I can't live without. So now, a couple ways. We want to find the center of this so it's going to match up also. So I literally just like to fold mine. It doesn't have, you can make it exact if you want, but I find this to be very easy. So I'm just going to find where my center point is. I'm going to take my pencil once again. I'm going to put X marks the spot. That's not going to help me right now, but it will in a minute. I'll show you what I'm going to do. So now I am going to take my transfer tape. Now, different people use different types of transfer tape. This is my absolute favorite. I also get it from 651 Vinyl. It is the blue transfer tape. Transfer tape is personal preference. So it's what you feel comfortable, what you like. I've actually also used contact paper, but I just love this transfer paper. Now, the one thing about transfer paper is we've got a bigger design here. I do not recommend tearing off all the back and applying it right away. It makes it easier if you just start a little piece of the transfer tape paper. And then I'm going to just put that part down on my design, like that. Got a little bit of a bubble there, but that'll be okay. We can work with that. A little ornery here. We would like to have that as smooth as possible. So I'm just going to pull it up a little bit. And just ease it down. Okay. Now remember where I did X marks the spot? I want to do that on the transfer tape now. So I'm going to be able to see through when I pull this all out. Okay. So we're going to, didn't do the best of job of putting that on there, but it's going to work for us. So I like to just very carefully pull if some of your transfer does not come up, I just use my finger to pull it back. Okay. Do my letters, and presto, everything came off like I wanted it to. Now, I always center in the middle. I've got X marks the spot there, and it marks it right there. And I'm just going to very smoothly smooth in my design. Now, some people like to do a reverse weed and actually paint on the design. That is totally personal preference. I like to use the vinyl because I just like how crisp and clean it all looks. And so I now am going to pull back. I'm just going to work it. And I definitely have a boo-boo there, so we'll have to play with that. A little bit of, so you just have to play with it. It's really important to make sure it's all down. I just like to work it a little bit. Okay, so don't crumple up that transfer paper because we definitely will reuse that. So it looks like that's really good. It looks like I definitely have a little bit of a problem with part of my W. So I'm going to carefully bring it back up. And smooth it back out. Okay. I am going to grab my so then my next piece I'm going to do is we are going to weed my last name because that's the next piece we're going to put in there. So, and I used, the fonts I've used on this, I will link down below in the video. I'm pretty sure I used Magnolia on this one. It's one of my favorite ones. Another hint for fonts is dafont.com is a great website. I'll do the link down below in the video. But Dafont is a place that you can get all kinds of free fonts. If you are not selling your items, you do not need to pay for the commercial license. So if you're just giving gifts away, but if you are going to be selling things, you definitely want to purchase the commercial license. But there are so many fonts out there. In fact, we did a football jersey this weekend, and we were even able to find the NFL font out there, so it could really match. So it looked really, really nice. Okay, so now I have got my last name, and what I'm going to do is I am going to do my transfer tape on it, and we're going to put it down. Now, probably not going to be able to pick up all of my last name with this transfer tape. So what I'll do is trim it a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to add that piece right on, and then trim it off. One thing, find my trusty little, rearrange my craft room and I can't find things now, so normally I would banish this down really good or varnish this down really good, but think it's grabbed really good. I'm going to pull from the back this time. You can do the back or the front, whichever works best for you. Okay, and we still got our X marks the spot there. So what we're going to do is just come where the middle of my name is, and I'm just going to do that with my fingers a little bit. And I am going to eyeball this baby. Now, you definitely can use a straight edge if you want. I am just going to eyeball it. I just put that vinyl right over the top. It's fun to try to decide your colors with this one. You want to think about that when you're getting ready to cut. You know, what color are you going to do your board? What colors do you want to punch, really punch out? Do you want a little bit of red in there? Do you want to put some blue in there? I just went with basic colors on this. Just really, that's my first piece of transfer tape coming off. And here is my second piece. So I'm going to have to play with that a little bit. I got a little bit of a crease in the L, but that's not a problem. It's kind of like that's not either. You just want to take your time. Oops. And we're going to pull that guy back up a little bit, but that's okay. We can do that. Okay. So let's just play with, and I use my pin just to get right underneath of there. And then I just pull it with my finger. And I push out any type of air bubbles you see. If you just kind of push out with them, they usually pick right up. So in that case, I'm just going to pull that. You don't want to pull this too many times because you don't want to lose your stickiness. Okay. So there we have. Now I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to get rid of that X marks the spot. So that's all gone. Okay. Just sometimes if you get down to eye level and you can really make sure that you don't have any extra marks. This one looks really good. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is personal choice. The 651 vinyl is a permanent vinyl, and it is a good permanent, just like the word says, it's a permanent vinyl. Since this is going to be a tray and there's going to be a lot of things on top of it, I like to put a finish on it. So that clear coat that we used before, I am going to take this back outside and I'm going to take 2 or 3 coats of the clear coat and I'm going to put over my saying now. And then when we come back in, we will put our handles on and we will have a completed project. So give me a minute. I'm going to go get this sprayed and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so our last step is going to be installing some handles. But I did want to make sure I showed you that I did put the clear glaze, the Kryon clear glaze on the tray. And I did about 2 coats out there. And I let that set outside and dry, and it's totally got a really nice finish to it. So I did go ahead and put that on, and now we're ready to put our handles. Now I picked up these handles at Habitat for Humanity, didn't pick these up at Habitat, but that is a great place to get them. I picked these ones up at Home Depot. So what I like to do is measure out where I am going to put the handles. So normally I like to put one in place and just kind of like eyeball it to see. Now keep in mind our center spot was about there, and so I'm going to take my tape measure again and I'm going to measure out about 1 inch, and then I like to take my pencil and mark in, and this is going to be where our screws are going to be. And do that. And then kind of eyeball it. Again, you can be more precise if you want, but if I base it on where my established sign is, or the established words are, and I put it about right there, I can mark my circles, and I've got some starts. Now, one thing my husband has taught me is it is always a good idea if you give your screws a little bit of a start. So I do have my own drills, and so what I'm going to do is just do a very small start on each one of these holes, and that way it is easier for the screws to go in. So I've got both of those started, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, excuse me for my dogs, they have decided to start barking tonight. I am going to just take my drill, my other drill, and I actually have two drills, and I like to have one with a, oops, I gotta have them going the right way so they'll go in. And for whatever reason, they are not wanting to cooperate with me tonight. So, having done that, I am going to start put my drill holes in a little bit further. Got some nice hard wood here that I'm using. Okay, I'm going to try this one more time with my drill. You can do this with a screwdriver too, but I do like my power tools. There we go. My husband always taught me righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So you want to make sure that your screwdriver is going in the right way, and I think that's what my biggest issue was, is that I did not have my screws going in the right way. So we're going to go ahead and put, and I'll put a link down to the handles that I'm using that I picked up at Home Depot. You guys have that. And one more screw. We're going to be in business with our tray. Now keep in mind, we had talked about that if you didn't want this to be a tray and you actually wanted it to be a Lazy Susan, you sure could. But now I have got a really nice tray that I can use, or I could put it up as a sign. So this is the completion of our tutorial on how to make a sign, a tray, or a Lazy Susan out of a round pine round that I picked up at Home Depot.
Thanks for joining me here at Fun Stuff Crafts again today. I hope this has inspired you. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and click to subscribe to my channel so you'll know next time when I have a video available. Also, check out my blog at funstuffcrafts.com. I hope I've inspired you to create.